Welcome to our weekly study on the Torah portion. The Torah portion for this week is Vaielech. Usually this Torah portion sometimes is together with the previous Torah portion that we just studied, and the Torah portion on Nitzavim. In this Torah portion we're going to be talking about some subjects, specifically about the words "and he went." Vaielech itself, what is the meaning, where Moshe actually went, also the meaning of the 120 years that Moshe lived, and we also will talk about why Moshe can no longer go forth and come into the land, and also the meaning behind why the Levites needed to be the people in charge of the safekeeping of the Ark of the Covenant. And then we're gonna be talking a little bit about what does it means when the Creator, when Moshe started talking about when they children of Israel start doing the wrong thing. What does it mean, that the Creator hide His face, and but He will not forget them, and basically the words were, he shall not be forgotten out of the mouth of their descendants. What is the importance of the descendants? And these things gonna connect what it's in the beginning. And he went, and Moshe went, basically. Vaielech Moshe, וידבר את הדברים האלה el kol Israel. And Moshe went and spoke these words to all of Israel. So I'll see you after the introduction, and we will start our lesson on our study in Parsha Vayeilech. Welcome back. Like we said, we're studying Parsha Vayeilech. Parsha Vayeilech is in the book of the Devarim. That is Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 1 to verse 30. This parsha is kind of like short, but it has a lot of information in it. And usually it's supposed to be going together with Parsha Nitzavim, but I decided to do a different video because it has so much information in it that it was worthy to make it a video on its own. So Vaielech, the parsha starts on verse 1 saying, Vaielech Moshe וידבר את הדברים האלה el kol Israel. Moshe went and spoke these words to all of Israel. And the question that the Zohar on volume 3, page 283a asks is, where Moshe went? Where did Moshe go after when he was going to speak these words to the people of Israel, right? So the Arizal, the Arim, in Char HaGilgulim, Hagdamah 17, chapter 13, which we have mentioned, this is reading from Rabbi Yaakov Haseira's, basically his explanation of this parsha. He's basically quoting Char HaGilgulim, Hagdamah 17, chapter 17, and he says, we have mentioned elsewhere, the Torah may be explained in 600,000 ways. What are these 600,000 ways? If you saw the video before, these 600,000 ways belong to the Six Sephirot that belong to the Parsha Serampin. It has 6 Sephirot. It has Chesed, Geburat, Tifaret, Hod, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. And these 6 each of these Sephirot has basically a numerical value of 1,000. So this is 100,000, and this is what it says that the explanation might be the 600,000 ways in which the Torah may be explained. And this is alluded also in the root souls of the members of what we call Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel. And basically what it says is Moshe knew all these ways of explaining the Torah. He knew them all. He knew as many as a soul can receive. Some souls, and when he mentions some souls, he's talking about the Israelites, right? The people of Israel. Some souls receive 100 explanations, while some receive more and others receive less, and some only receive one. As Moshe knew all of them, he knew every explanation that any Israelite would ever think of, right? So, according to this, when we ask Moshe went, where did he go, right? Vaielech Moshe. What we're basically saying is, if he went, where did he go? And according to what the explanation of the Kabbalist is telling us, that Moshe is basically did go to what is called an eternity, because Moshe is still with us these days. Every year we read the Torah, it's like Moshe talking to us. So he did not go to the land of that we called, Israel, but he went to future generations to continue the work that he started with the Bnei Israel. It says here, Rabbi Yogabu Haseda says, or sages say, that the entire Torah was given to Moshe at Mount Sinai, including the insights that will only be revealed by later generations. So Solomon, the king, Shlomo HaMelech, alluded to this when he said, Ma Shechaya Hu Shechaya. Actually, Ma Shechaya Hu Sheyaheh. Whatever has been is what will be. That's in Proverbs 1 verse 9. The first three words of this verse, the initial letters of this verse, spell the name Moshe, Mem, Shin, He. So whatever has been revealed to Moshe is what will be for all generations. And there will never be a new insight that Moshe has not attained during his time or life in this in this planet, in this physical reality. So Moshe is not preparing to leave this world, right? He's telling Israel as follows: even though I possess all 600,000 explanations of the Torah, do not think they will all be lost when I leave this world. Rather, my soul will shine throughout the generations, and each person, according to his level, will receive these insights. We can understand now, when he says, Vaielech Moshe went, that even though he's leaving the world, he knew that all the explanations of the Torah that he ever knew will be kind of like lost. So rather, his lights will continue to shine in each generation and enlighten them, and in order to continue speaking to the future generations through the study that we do with the Torah, and also the deeper study that we do with the Kabbalah. And this generation, which is the one that is revealing the Kabbalah and all that, it's the generation that is revealing this light that Moshe hid during that time in the Torah, because it was reserved for the generation in the future that was supposed to enlighten the world with what we call today in modern terms the Kabbalah. So when he says, that he spoke these words to all Israel, call Israel. In other words, all these possible explanations of the Torah will be known by all the people of Israel combined. So all the people of Israel, doesn't matter the level they are. These different levels are the ones that are going to come together, combined, and create a whole. And it says, "It is the light of Moshe's soul, shining in each generation, which reveals this explanation to the people." So each generation, when we're reading the Torah, when we're studying the Kabbalah and the deeper meaning of the Torah, we are revealing the light that Moshe has in his soul. And we go into the second verse and the third verse on chapter 31. "And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I can no longer go out and come in. For Hashem has said to me, you shall not cross this Jordan. Hashem your God, he will cross before you. He will destroy these nations from before you, and you shall possess them. Yehoshua, he is the one who shall cross over before you, as Hashem has spoken." So, based on the book of Chaim Vital, called Etz Chaim, where he wrote the teachings of the Arizal, specifically on Gate 14, chapter 6, he says that there are 120 possible combinations of the name Yohevaheh. Within the back portion of the Sephirah Bina, this is the Hor portion, the back portion refers to the attribute of justice, represented by the name Elohim. There are 120 different ways to arrange these 5 letters of Elohim. Okay? These 120 combinations are likewise found in the Sephirah of Malchut, and they spread throughout the worlds of Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. The Arizal writes elsewhere in Etz Chaim, Gate 44, chapter 7, that from the furthermost edge of this 120 combination, the other gods, the forces of Tumah or impurity, draw their energy. The strength is weakened by the attribute of justice in the word depends upon the following. If the people of Israel follow Hashem's will, then the holy name Elohim, God representing justice, becomes sweetened, and consequently the power of Elohim Ha'acharim, which is the gods or of the back, or translated in English not perfectly, but the other gods, is weakened. The other gods means, these forces of Tumah. Just because it says Elohim Acharim doesn't mean, that it has to do with, there's the name of God, Elohim, but it's Acharim. Acharim means, the aspect of justice, but also with aspects of the Tumah in it. If the people of Israel do not follow the will of the Creator, then the name Elohim, representing justice, becomes strengthened. Consequently, the other gods, this Elohim Acharim, the forces of impurity, which feed upon this name, become stronger, as does the attribute of justice in the world. So that's why you have wars, famine, bad things happening, natural disasters, and all that. The number 120, the number of possible combinations of the letter Elohim, is also the numerical value of the word Sel, which is translated as shadow. When a person follows the straight and proper path, we call it Israel, which is Yashar Kel. Yashar meaning direct, and Kel is El, the name of God El, so it's directly to El, directly to God. When you follow, or the people of Israel follow the straight and proper path, These 120 combinations that represent justice are sweetened and they become a protective shadow over Israel. If a person behaves otherwise, then the attributes of justice is strengthened and evil befalls the world. This is what the verse in Psalm 23 verse 4 calls Sal Ma'et. Sal Ma'et, the shadow of death. So when the attribute of justice increases, it's represented by the 120 combinations of Elohim, it becomes a source of death, since these Elohim Aharim, the other gods, the forces of impurity or Tumah, draw their strength from it and carry out justice in the world. So this is, like I mentioned before, the reason why we have famine, wars, bad things happening to even good people and all that, because these forces are feeding from the name Elohim. And why they feed from the name Elohim? Because they're not sweetened by the chesed, by the side of mercy, and that will bring basically the balanced even. And now we're in the middle path, which is the Yashar Kel that we talked, the direct path towards the Creator. Okay, so that's basically the 120, the meaning of the 120. So then Rabbi Yaakov Haseira continues explaining these 120 when he says, that Moshe says, I am 120 years old today. He says that Moshe was 120 years old when he died. Right? Why does Moshe need to mention his age at that moment? Right? His intent was that during the 120 years of his life, he has rectified and sweetened the 120 combinations of Elohim within the Sephirah Binah, where his soul was rooted. So the root of Moshe was rooted on Binah. A further hint to this is found in the words Hayom Lo, today I cannot. As the final letter spell Im, which is Ima, mother, referring to the Sephirah Binah, the Sephirah that Moshe has sweetened. He has basically balanced the force on that Sephirah. Furthermore, the word Anuchi Hayom Lo, I am today, I cannot, have the initial letters of Leah. So now once again, like we spoken in previous Parsha, this Parsufin, Leah, Parsufin, Rachel, they started, appearing once again. That's how important they are. So Anuchi Hayom Lo, it have the initial letters Lamed, Aleph, and Hey, which spell the name of Leah, which is an aspect of the Sephirah Malchut. Through the spiritual realm of Leah, the attribute of justice within Binah is strengthened, and Moshe's soul is rooted within this realm of Leah as well. Moshe basically can be or can say that he has sweetened the 120 attributes of justice within Binah and within Leah, and they correspond to the years of his life. Furthermore, his intention was to sweeten the 120 combinations of Elohim within Malchut by entering the land of Israel, which correspond to Malchut. However, he was not granted that permission. That's why he says he can no longer go out and come in. He was not granted that permission because then he says, Lo tabo et hayarden hase, I shall not cross this Jordan. The word latseot, go out, can be rearranged as sel, which means shadows, and has a numerical value of 120, and the letters et, which represent the Sephirah Malchut, and that's according to the Zohar. When we read the Zohar, Volume 1, page 247a, which contains 120 combinations of Elohim. Moshe is saying, I wanted to enter the land and sweeten these attributes of justice within Malchut, but Hashem did not grant me permission. Therefore, Lo echol od latzet. I can no longer go out. In other words, I will not be able to rectify the tzel et, the 120 combinations of Elohim within Malchut. And let's skip a verse of that where it says, Yehoshua who ober lefanecha. Yehoshua, he shall cross over before you. Yehoshua, whose soul is rooted in Malchut, will cross over before you. And why Yehoshua was chosen to do that? The word ober, which means cross over, means also removal, referring to the removal of the attributes of justice and the sweetening of these attributes of justice within Malchut. The name Yehoshua without the Vav has a numerical value of 385, the same as the name of Shekhinah, which corresponds to Malchut. It hints to us that Yehoshua's soul is rooted in Malchut, and the Vav indicates that he has Moshe's strength with him. The letter Vav is the third letter of the name Yohevavhe, which represents seramping. It corresponds to the Sephirot Tiferet, and it is associated with Moshe. How is that associated with Moshe? Like we mentioned before, Moshe has this knowledge of the 600,000 versions of or ways to interpret the Torah. So Moshe has completed basically that Sephirot Tiferet. From that Sephirot Tiferet is where the energy is going to be received directly from Bina, where Moshe's soul is rooted. So from Bina, when Moshe sweetened those attributes of justice in Bina, the light of Chogma, which is the light that is enclosed then when Bina is sweetened, is including Or Hasidim, comes down to Serampin, and Serampin now, through, like they say here, through the strength of Moshe, represented by the Vav, can give that light down to the final Hey of the Yohevavhe, which is Malchut, which is where Yehoshua is going to do his work. Okay? So let's talk now about verse 7. And verse 7 says, Moshe summoned Yehoshua and said to him before the eyes of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you shall come with these people to the land that Hashem swore to their forefathers to give them, and you shall cause them to inherit it. So what does this mean in Kabbalistic terms, right? Why Moshe said, Ki ata tabo, you shall come, but later he said, Ki ata tabi, you shall bring, you shall come and you shall bring. Perhaps, this is Rabbi Yaakov Haseira, we can explain this according to Sefer Halikutim, quoting the Arizal in Sha'ar HaPesukim, Yehoshua, Siman 1, which says as follows. In the beginning of Sefer Yehoshua, it says, Chazak ve'amatz, be strong and courageous. 3 times it says that. The word Chazak, be strong, 3 times, has the numerical value of 345, the same as the name Moshe. This indicates that Moshe has 3 different strengths, and he bestowed them upon Yehoshua. The 3 strengths are three different stages of development. And now we're entering a little bit of advanced Kabbalah, because these three stages of development are called Ibur, Yenika, Mochim, which is gestation, suckling, and intellect. Mochim, intellect. Gestation is Ibur, Yenika is suckling. So this is like the stages of a fetus, a baby, and then an adulthood. And the Sephirot of Seramping undergoes all these three stages. These three stages of strength are alluded in the three verses of Sefer Yehoshua, where he says Hasak, Hasak, Hasak. Right? Hashem first told Yehoshua, as I was with Moshe, so I will be with you, and I will not weaken you, nor will I forsake you. Be strong and courageous. This is in the book of Yehoshua, chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. The verse allude to the period of the what is called the Ibur, the gestation, in which occurs in the Sephirah Binah, and Binah corresponds to the name Ehyeh, I will be, right? This is according to the Tikkunim 148. After that, Hashem said to Yehoshua, only be very strong, Hasak, strong, and courageous to observe, to do according to entire Torah that Moshe my servant commanded you. This is in Yehoshua chapter 1 verse 7. Then the Torah includes both the written and oral Torah, as comprised of 6 orders. These correspond to the 6 Sephirot, which are Seramping. And during the next stage of development, comparable to the Yenika, which is suckling, afterwards Hashem said to Yehoshua, be strong and courageous, do not fear, and do not lose resolve, for Hashem your God is with you wherever you go. And that's once again in Yehoshua, book of Yehoshua, chapter 1, verse 9. The word Asher might be arranged, and this is a word in that verse, Asher, might be arranged and spelled the word Rosh. And we have seen these before in other parshas that we have studied, referring to the highest of the 3 Sephirot, which are considered as the brain, the Mochim, right? So this is Binah and Chokmah. The Binah, Chokmah, and Keter, of course. When Seramping contains these Sephirot, its development is complete. So it's in total adulthood, right? So Rabbi Yaakov Haseres says, so basically what he's saying, that be strong and courageous, likewise alluding to the 3 strengths, right? Then he said, Anuchi Ehyeh Imoch, I shall be with you. And this is, from the verse that we were reading, verse 7, chapter 31, at the end. The words Ehyeh, I shall be, refers to the Sephirah Binah, mother, which refers to the period of that we mentioned, Ibur, gestation, for it contains the child, as well as to the full stage of development, as Binah is one of the 3 highest Sephirot, referred to as the Mochims, the brains, right? The Mochim. As explained in Kavanot HaTefillin, this is Shar HaKavanot 10d, regarding the expression Ehyeh, Yohevaheh, Ehyeh, I shall be, Hashem, I shall be. The name Ehyeh represents Binah, is mentioned twice, corresponding to the two stages of development. So now we're gonna go and talk about the part that it says, this is on chapter 31 verses 16 to 20. There's a part in which says, that I will say on that day, behold, it is not because my God is not on my midst that this evil has come upon me, but I will surely have hidden my face on that day because of all the evil that it did, for it had turned to other gods. So now write this song for yourself and teach it to your children of Israel. Israel, place it in their mouth, so that this song shall be for me a witness against the children of Israel. So if he's talking about hiding the face, so we're going to talk about what does that mean, uh, hiding the face. First of all, why they're hiding their face. What we need to understand is what he's talking here. He's talking about when the children of Israel went to Babylon. When they went to Babylon, they were in an exile in which, when they were taken out of that exile, there were no miracles. Unlike the exile in Egypt, there were a lot of wonders and miracles. This exile was different, and it was different because compared to the exile in Egypt, the exile in Egypt was different in the sense that the Israelites, they kept the breed, they kept the covenant, starting with the symbolism behind Joseph being representative of the Sephirot, Sephirah Yesod, which is Sephirah foundation, which is the symbol of the human sexual organs, right? And it was because he took care first of perfecting or correcting this issue of basically the uses of the forces of creating another human being, the forces of the libido, the sex, in the proper way. And that means that he kept the covenant of the breed properly, that he wasn't misusing that force or spilling the seed, as we call it, because the forces of evil then will take over. That's why they were able to keep themselves somehow connected with the Creator, because they didn't forsake the covenant. The only difference that they didn't have the Torah yet, but they had the covenant according to what they have received per Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, right? In Babylon, it was different. They didn't keep that covenant. And it says here, this is a prophecy basically, where it says, and annul, they have annulled basically my covenant, right? The covenant refers to the breed, right? The holy breed plays in it. The domain of the forces of impurity take over when it's not kept properly. And this is, even though they were having licentiousness, as it says here, according to Sanhedrin, Talmud Sanhedrin 93a and Talmud Sanhedrin 106a. When the Jewish people or the Israel people guard the covenant, the breed, then they are the nation, and the Creator is their God. Otherwise, what's happening is that the Creator seems to us, from our point of view, that he has hidden his face. We have basically turned the open realms back to back. So if they're back to back, they can no longer procreate. They can no longer send light down to earth. So the forces of evil get strong, right? Once we guard the breed, when we're taking care of that force and use it properly, those Parsufim, those forces then look face to face, and that's when they can procreate, meaning they can give to the lower realms, right? So that's basically what it's saying here. This is what happened in Babylon. So that's why there was no miracles. However, this has to do with the book of Esther and the story of Esther, the king, Ahasuerus, and Haman, and Mordecai, right? That the symbolism behind the book of Esther is that even though it was by the human interaction, the Creator was working behind somehow. That's why the word or the name of God is not found in the book of Esther, but is hidden in some places. That behind everything, the Creator is moving the pieces in the chessboard, right? And And that's why then later, when they're able to go back to the land of Israel, it was asked for the children of Israel to divorce the wives that, basically foreigners, the wives that were foreigners, that were not part of the Israelite people, that were not, in this case, Jews. And that's the meaning. They were basically, when we talk about marrying wives that were from other nations are egoistic desires. So they were basically attached to these egoistic forces, and what was asked of them was like, detach yourself from these egoistic forces and attach yourself to the Shekhinah, which is the force that you need to attach to, and start creating this collective soul that we're all, in order to start bringing down once again the light of the Creator into the holy temple, when they went back and returned to Jerusalem and started reconstructing the whole thing. So this is all in this parsha. This is why he's saying about the reason for the Creator to be hiding his face. And I say, I will hide my face from them, and they will become prey as a result, and many evils and sufferings will come upon it. These evils and sufferings refers to the decrees that Ahasuerus and Haman made to destroy the Jewish people in the city of Shushan, reading up from Rabbi Yaakov Haseira. But I will surely have hidden my face on that day. Our sages, and this is in Talmud Hulim 139b, interpret this as Haster. Haster it means I will hide in the days of Esther. Haster. So Esther means hidden, right? That's what such shows that name. In other words, through Esther, I will cease hiding my face and nullify the evil decrees, as the name Esther also implies nullifying. In truth, it is fitting that I should hide my face because of all the evil that it did, for it has turned to other gods. Remember we talked about it, Elohim Achai, right? These other gods that get strength, these evil forces of Tumah get strength because of not keeping the straight path. And then, remember we mentioned that after the exile, the Babylonian exile, the people of Israel go back to the land. Then he mentions, for I shall bring them to the land that I swore to the forefathers. This redemption will be inferior to the first redemption, inferior to the Egyptian redemption, as they will not have miracles, as indicated by the word Avienu, explained above what caused this, because while they were in the exile in Babylon, they were eating, they were sated, they were growing fat, and they ate and even forbidden things. And they turned to other gods, and that's why it is important that that we keep this in mind, because this is a prophecy that was going to happen in the future, talking about the exile in Babylon. So now we're going to go and talk about the verses 25 and 26, where he says, Moshe commanded the Levites, the bearers of the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem, saying, take this Torah scroll and place it beside the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem your God, and it shall be there for you as witness. So those of us that in the morning, after we get up, we wash our hands, we put the talit, start doing the morning prayers and put the tefillin and all that, there's a prayer that is in there, and that prayer is that we want to unite basically the Yohe with the Vavhe, and that prayer comes from this teaching of Kabbalah. It's basically based on Kabbalah. This is our main goal of our Torah mitzvah, Torah and commandments, and the prayers to unite Hashem and His Holy Shekhinah. So the Yohe with a Vav He, right? Therefore, the Kabbalist, and this is according to Shar HaMitzvot 1b, enacted, I should say, for the unification of Hashem and His Shekhinah. This is what we say when we're going to perform mitzvot. Okay. The unification comes about by unifying the Sephirot of Chokmah and Bina, which are called Abba Ve'ima, father and mother. Therefore, after saying for the unification of Hashem and His Shekhinah, we say in fear and love. The fear refers to father, while love refers to the mother, right? These Sephirot are what unify Hashem and His Shekhinah. Thus, unification also requires spiritual light from Hashem, who is above all the worlds. This is the meaning behind Moshe commanded the Levite. V'yatzu Moshe et Halevim. The Levites refer to the great holy people whose yearning and desire is to unite Hashem and His Shekhinah. The word Halevim, the Levites, has a numerical value of 91, the same as the name Yohevaheh, representing Hashem, and the name Adonai, which is associated with the Shekhinah. So 91 represents the union of these two names, Yohevaheh and Adonai. So that's why if you have a Sidur, a prayer book in Hebrew, a Kabbalistic one with the Kabbanot, what we call the meditations, you're gonna find that every time you have the Yohevaheh, there's going to be the letters of Adonai in it, and this is basically what it is all about. It's about this unification of Hashem with His Shekhinah, that we should meditate on that whenever we're reading a prayer and the name Yohevah is there, and the letters of the Adonai, the name of Adonai, are there as well. So the word Vehalevim and the Levites is related to the word Venilov. They shall join, and in the verse, they shall be joined to you. This is in Bamidbar, the previous book, in the wilderness, where it says Moshe is saying to the Jewish people, you should realize that uniting Hashem and His Shekhinah is brought about through father and mother, and you need to have in mind as you learn the Torah to do the commandments, the mitzvot, or corrections, and pray. Prayer, those of you who have been studying with us, prayer is basically this yearning for connection with the Creator. The real prayer is a prayer that is altruistic. It's a prayer that is the prayer of many as well, they call it, because if the more people that are together with the same goal, the better. And it's basically a request to the upper realm to bring the light down. It's called raising the feminine waters. It's not just saying the prayers that we read in a book, and that's just a reading. If you do it with the proper Kabbalah and everything, the prayer, even the prayer that is not in the Siddur, the eternal prayer that we should have constantly actually, is a raising of man, Nuchbin, the feminine waters. And that itself brings down the light, and brings down also the unification of Hashem and His Shekhinah, and corrections in our soul, because most of the prayers, if you really look at it, we are asking for things, we're asking for blessings and everything, but in reality, is that at that moment of prayer, their powers and forces align, that through that prayer, through that perfect kavanah and intention, right, we can bring down those package of energies and make things happen in our lives. Sometimes those things might come in a form of negative things, but that's our perception. Sometimes out of something that we look at it and it's kind of negative, something good happened, because the Creator is good. That always means good, right? So keep that in mind. The unification that brings together Hashem and His Shekhinah is through the Sephirah Yesod, and we mentioned Yesod before. It has to do with the Brit, the covenant. So the bearers of the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem. So it says, Nasei Aaron Brit Adonai. The Ark refers to the Shekhinah. The name Yohevah, which we read at Adonai, right? What is Yohevah? Refers to the Sephirot Serampim. And the word Brit, covenant, refers to the Sephirah Yesod that unites them. This is the meaning behind the bearers of the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem. So now the Torah is explaining who these Halevim, these Levites are. They are the ones that bear the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem. The word Nisei, bear, is related to the word Nisuim, which is marriage, meaning that they unite the Ark with the name Yohevah, the Ark, the Shekhinah with the Yohevah. And they do so through the covenant, through the Brit, the covenant of the Sephirot Yesod. The word Aaron, Ark, alludes to the Sephirah of Malchut, which is kingdom, right? Which is the Shekhinah. The allusion is as follows. The word Aaron contains the letter Ner in it, which means candle. And we talk about it in the previous Parsha about Ner, which is Nefesh and Ruach. And with the remaining letters being Aleph and Vav, whose numerical value is 7. And this 7 refers to the Shekhinah, which is called the daughter of 7. This is according to Zohar, volume 1, page 223b. The word Ner candle has a numerical value 250, the same as the 3 combinations of Hashem's name that correspond to the Shekhinah. The names Yohevah and Adonai, the names Yohevah and Elohim, and the names Yohevah and Ehyeh. This is according to the Tree of Light, the Etz Chaim, Gate 15, chapter 1. So when he says Lekocha et Sefer HaTorah Haseh, take this Torah scroll, the verse is alluding to the following: the union that you shall create between Hashem and His Shekhinah must be through the father and the mother. This is all the Sephirot Chokmah and Bina. The word Sefer refers to the Sephirah Yesod, and this is the Yesod within the Sephirah of Chokmah, which is the father, while the word HaTorah, the Torah, this Torah, refers to the Yesod, but the Yesod in the Sephirah Bina, which is the mother. In other words, they needed to draw upon this Sephirot Yesod of these two parsufs, Yesod of Abba and Yesod of Ima, Yesod of Chokmah, Yesod of Bina, right? And this is according, to Etz Chaim, Gate 11, chapter 4. Therefore, in this way, they're considered as one. Remember, these are the sexual organs, and when these two Sephirot or Parsufim look at each other face to face, that's when they create or procreate. And the procreation is basically brings light down. And this is where Abba Ve'ima then give to the children, or give birth to children, which is Serampim and Malchut. And then Serampim and Malchut, as we mentioned in the Parsha before, are like the fathers to us, right? Because we are the ones that are doing that prayer, doing that request, in order to receive through them. So now Rabbi Yaakov Buchaseira, and I'm gonna read this. I'm not gonna put anything on my words because I think it's very important to listen what Rabbi Yaakov Buchaseira said in his words. He says when he says take this Torah scroll, he says the following: we can understand this literally as referring to a Torah scroll. The implications are as follows. The Torah scroll only contains letters and their crowns, but not any vowels and cantillation marks. This is because the Torah scroll itself alludes to the kings who have died. The 7 kings mentioned in Parsha Vayeilech, they represent the 7 lower Sephirot of the world of Atzilut that descended to the lower worlds. This is when the Shevirah HaKelim happened, the breaking of the vessels. Their dying was a loss of the higher parts of their souls, but they remained in their nefesh and ruach. Lower parts of the soul, or lower forms of life energy, which correspond to the letters and the crowns upon the letters. When we read from the Torah, pronouncing the vowels and chanting the cantillation notes, we draw the higher levels of the soul, neshama and chaya, into these kings who have died. The letters are the nefesh, the crowns are the ruach, the vowels are the neshama, and the cantillation notes are the chaya. Regarding these Sephirot, the Sephirah of Binah, the mother, Ima, contains the vowels, and the Sephirah of the father, Chokmah, Abba, contains the cantillation notes. This is the meaning behind take this Torah scroll. The word et in this verse, when it says Kocha et ha-sefer ha-Torah, et ha-sefer, so he's referring to et. The word et is an acronym for Atiot, Tagim, letters and crowns. In other words, take this Torah scroll, which contains only letters and crowns, and read it with vowels and cantillation notes. This brings an neshama and chaya to the kings that die, right? And then it says, Vesantem oto, and place it. The words sam, place, or sham, for some reason it's sam here because it's ancient Hebrew, right? Sam, place, implies a rectification. In other words, you need to rectify these kings. And this is how it's related to Genesis, when the first day, second day, third day, it's referring to the rectification of these kings, okay? And then when he says, mitzed Aaron Brit Adonai Elohechem, beside the ark of the covenant of Hashem your God. This alludes to the Abba Ve'ima, which is Chokmah and Binah, which correspond to Neshama and Chaya, the vowels and cantillation notes that we spoke. The allusion is as follows: the words Mitzad Aaron, beside the ark, the initial letter spelled Im, Aleph Mem, mother. Similarly, the words Aaron, Brit, Aleph Bet, right? The initial letter spelled Ab, which is Abba, father. When you recite the Torah with this in mind, then Vehaya Shen Vecha Laed, and it shall be there for you as a witness. So spiritual light will shine within your nefesh, ruach, and neshama, measuring for measure, and the words Tamin, Nekudot, Tagin, Atiot, which are the cantillations, notes, vowels, crowns, and letters. The initial letters are Ted, Nun, Tav, and Aleph, which have the numerical value of 460, the same as the letters Samek and Ted, which are the initial letters of Sefer Torah, the book of the Torah, this Torah scroll, right? This indicates that when we read from the Torah, we must include all these things: cantillation notes, vowels, crowns, and letters. So Then he goes mentioning about the importance of using the Torah to correct the blemish of the Brit. And he mentions specifically that if a person hold the Torah scroll in Yom Kippur, he rectifies any blemish caused by the Brit. This is according to Shar HaKabbalah, not 100a, for those that are interested. But we're not going to go deep into that. It's a lot of advanced stuff in here. So then he gives us, a more simple explanation of what is before, and this is basically the way he explained. He repeats. Rabbi Yaakov Hasera repeats the same verse, and he gives an explanation that is very in depth for those who will have advanced knowledge. And then he brings sometimes against those verses, and then he explains it like for the layman. This is basically when he explained it like for the layman, or at least people that know a little bit of Kabbalah. He said, take this Torah scroll, meaning make every effort to purchase a Torah scroll, and realize that this will bring about a great rectification for any blemish you have caused to the covenant, to the Brit of the circumcision, and place it beside the Ark of the Covenant. In other words, to rectify the covenant, to rectify the Brit, the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem, your God. When the blemish of the Brit is done, it also blemishes the upper worlds, and because the name of Yehovah is inscribed in that Torah, right, the covenant. So when you purchase a Torah scroll, you rectify the spiritual words that you have blemished. And there's a lot of other meanings here, because the word kesef, basically money, right? It means masach. Masach means a screen, means an intention, the proper intention. So buying means reading or getting the Torah with the proper intention. Intention means lishma. Lishma means for his name's sake. And it shall be there for you as a witness, right? There, the word, sham, has the numerical value 340, as we mentioned before, and is the same as the names Shaddai and Yehovah that are inscribed upon the covenant, the Brit. Also, it hints to the following: when you purchase a Torah scroll, meaning you get that screen, the masach, that proper intention for the sake of the Creator, not for your own sake, you rectify any blemish it caused to the covenant, to the Brit. From then, you must be extremely careful to fulfill every Torah, everything in the Torah, every correction that the Torah prescribes. And this is why in the book of Yehoshua, verse 8 says, your way will be successful and you will act wisely. If a person does this, purchase a Torah scroll, but continue his evil ways, God forbids, then the Torah will accuse him rather than speaking in his defense. So the Torah will be prosecutor instead of the lawyer, the defender. And it shall be there for you as a witness. Take great care and fulfill everything that is written in the Torah, in the Sefer Torah. And then it shall be as an ed, as a witness for you. Then you shall be successful, and God will be with you in your troubles. And here is basically quoting from the book of Job 22:25. Just be strong and courageous. Do not fear and do not lose resolve, for Hashem your God is with you wherever you go. This is quoting from the book of Joshua, or the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. And this is how Rabbi Yaakov Hasera finishes his commentary on this Parsha Vayeilech. And as you can see, there was a lot of information here, but the theme that basically seems to appear every time is about the Brit. It's about the covenant. It's about this Yesod, that we need to unblock that energy in that Sephirah in order to allow that energy of the upper Sephirot, the 6 upper Sephirot, to come down to Malchut. And that can only be done if we guard the Brit, and if we do the proper Kavanot, the proper intentions when we're doing things, and that we're not doing it for our sake, that we're doing it for the sake of others. And this is why it is so important to love others as we love ourselves, because that's a very strong way to unblock anything that is keeping this light from to come down to the lower realms. Also, what we need to keep in mind from this parsha is that where did Moshe go, right? Moshe went to the future, to the past, basically to every generation, and that's why when we read the Torah every year, and pretty soon we're going to start a new cycle of the Torah, we need to keep in mind that Moshe speaks to us every year, and every year we receive one of those levels of interpretation that Moshe acquired. 600,000 interpretations, and we can at least touch a little bit of those interpretations every year of our lives as we study the Torah every year with these cycles that we have. So Moshe is still speaking to us these days. Moshe has sweetened the backside of Binah. It refers to the justice and ordain, and he has basically done this, and the light is there available for us. All we need to do is to connect to this seramping with the force of Moshe, like Yehoshua did, and this is through the Sephirah Yesod, and that's why this is so important here to talk about the Brit, because it is important to understand that anything that does damage to the Brit does damage in the words above. And this is the reason why when the Israelites were in exile in Babylon, they didn't have the miracles and the wonders, because they abandoned the Brit. Unlike in Egypt, they didn't do that, so they were basically taken out with a strong hand and miracles and wonders and all that. So can we apply that to our lives? Absolutely. So think this not only in terms of as a whole. Think about that. About us ourselves, and you'll see with the proper intention, by the buying of the Torah, the proper masach, the proper screen, you will acquire the wisdom and knowledge and understanding that is required to do this type of work. So this is all I have for now. I'll see you in the next Parsha. That's Parsha Ha'azinu. If you see me before Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. And pretty soon, according to the year that we're right now, we're going to have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So if you're seeing this, be ready, because we're going to have also teachings about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur that probably going to have information you never heard before. Okay, so Shalom, and I'll see you next time. Later out.